Alright, so the Power Rangers reunion special dropped on Netflix last week. I don't know when, but of course it dropped on Netflix. Is that where Power Rangers airs nowadays? I honestly don't know, but the original show and like one or two of the recent seasons are on there. And anyway, my point is it seems like anytime someone's trying to make a reunion special like 20 years after the fact, they always just drop it straight onto Netflix because the Rocco and Vader Zim reunions were on there too, and a couple other shows that I don't feel like bringing up. Anyway, let me just cut to the chase here, and I'll let you guys know that this is a special made for the fans, and almost aggressively so that it like autistically sticks to the canon and has some really over-the-top, overcomplicated explanations to just justify all the shit going down in it. That being said, it's still a good special. It has a lot of the fun and the cheesiness of the original show, and I can appreciate it for that. Although, overall, it's kind of a weird mental exercise that raises some questionable questions about the direction and the way they made this special. So, this Power Rangers reunion special takes place in a weird world where the original Power Rangers situation kind of just never ended. It just kept going, and now here we are 30 years later, and the original Power Rangers are still out there Power Rangering. Which isn't what happened in real life, because in the real show, over the years, the actors and the suits that they wore were phased out to make way for these suits from other more popular or more relevant Super Sentai series. Although, a lot of credit goes to Power Rangers Season 2, where they tried their hardest to not go that route. Anyway, so this movie is mostly about a robotic Rita Repulsa who shows up out of nowhere and kills Trini the Yellow Ranger. Rather than do a full summary, I'm going to mix things up in this video and just kind of go more into my thoughts on this topic and the story, instead just like going through it beat by beat, because honestly this movie's a real mess. So the original Power Rangers team is completely in a weird place for this movie, so let's just talk about them real fast and go over them all. The Red Ranger, Austin St. John, while well respected up until a few years ago, as recently as 2019 I saw him at Comic-Con, he's not in this movie because he was suddenly named in a crypto Ponzi scheme lawsuit in 2022. I don't know whether or not he's guilty in that, and I want to think he isn't, but nonetheless he's listed as officially absent for legal issues. Next up, a lot of people were hoping the original Pink Ranger would be in here, but she's unfortunately pushing 60, but I gotta say she looks great for her age. Unfortunately, there's no real reason why she didn't participate in this, but she's kind of like really danced around the issue. The prime issue seems to be that she wanted more money, but that looks bad, so she's kind of tried to change the story that she was just too old to do it, but again, by all accounts, I would say she's aged the least out of all the Rangers except for one other. That being said, the second Pink Ranger, Kat, takes her place, and while it was an interesting throwback to see her again, she seems way too old to be doing this job right now. She has a hard grandmother look, and it's honestly a little bit sad. And now I guess let's discuss Troy Tang, who unfortunately died in a car accident 10 years after the original show ended, and she is also kind of in this special for a hot couple of seconds, at least in terms of being stock audio files. But then they finally kill her off in the in-show universe too, and this is probably the most tragic and complicated, head-scratching development of the special. Because this special, really what it is, it's a long overdue funeral for this poor girl who we all loved, and unfortunately, this funeral was suddenly ridiculously completely blown out of the water and completely overshadowed by the fact that Jason David Frank committed suicide while the special was in the middle of its production. And in the end, it kind of morphed into a weirdly steered memorial for the both of them. But really, it's mostly about the Yellow Ranger and not so much about the Green Ranger. The JDF sound bites are very omnipresent in the special. I don't know what the deal is with that. Maybe they wanted him to have a clear voice cameo. Maybe that was his idea. Maybe this was some sort of posthumous idea to give some extra money to his family. But supposedly, by all account, he didn't want anything to do with this special because he was working towards completing his own dark indie movie, The Legend of the White Dragon, which, despite having a really racist sounding name, I'm looking forward to watching it in theaters this summer. Hopefully when I watch that movie, I'll be able to fully process my own thoughts on Jason David Frank's death, but for the most part, his death is a major tragedy, and I'll try to talk about that more when Legend of the White Dragon comes out. Anyway, back to Troy Tang, because this is her day. So yeah, this special super awkwardly introduces her daughter. Her daughter is played by an actress I've never heard of named Charlie Kirsch. And I'm really struggling to understand what's going on in this movie and how they handled it. Because there was a light backlash to the 2017 Power Rangers film because seemingly not enough respect was paid to her legacy and her memory, and she was played by a Spanish girl, but that movie was a reboot and it wasn't a memorial project. So, I mean, yeah, a nice head nod would have been like polite, but they really didn't have to do it at that movie. Meanwhile, with this reunion special, they just full on drove into it head first. But I think they dove into it so hard that it turned into a real mess because, honestly, in my opinion, they handled it awkwardly. Charlie Kirsch is not Toy Trang's biological daughter, and of course she is because Toy Trang died in her early 20s. She died as a kid, and unfortunately this special puts us into this weird alternate reality where she died in her 60s after living a full and enriching life with a husband and children. Now, it's a stretch of the imagination for sure, but considering her tragic real-life death, it, at least for me, felt like an icky step in the wrong direction. Anyway, Charlie Kirsch is okay. She's pretty endearing. She has a few cute moments where she, really shows how cute she is, but I don't know. The only issue I have with her story arc in this film is essentially she just wants to be the Yellow Ranger so bad that all of a sudden she is. Which would have been fine and all, but considering this is a one-and-done special, I'm kind of weirded out that they went through so much trouble to recast the role, because I know this film is really grappling about how to handle Toy's death in the right way and honor her right, but I don't know, I feel like replacing her with an imaginary daughter, I mean, I get that they're trying to show that her legacy continued, but I'm not sure if this was really the best way to do it. Honestly, I don't know. I mean, I feel like she probably should have died in the continuity so they could discuss her death. But, I don't know. I didn't like it the way they did this. Anyway, there's two more Rangers to discuss, and these ones are actually in this movie. First up, Billy the Blue Ranger, played by David Yost. Yost was a really interesting character because he was on the show the longest, despite seemingly hating the show, and despite becoming completely irrelevant as a character in the later seasons, just kind of acting as a mentor figure that did nothing. Despite the fact he was on the show the longest, he's also been one of the most vocal critics of the show because he was openly gay in the 1990s, and everyone gave him a lot of shit for it, and he suffered numerous disadvantages for his life as being an openly gay man in 1990s Hollywood. Anyway, he directed the special, and I'll get into that later. Next up, let's talk about Zach the Black Ranger, who also comes back. And honestly, Zach rules in this. Zach ended up kind of saving the movie for me. He was my favorite character in this. And I gotta say, Zach has not aged a day since 1993. In one of the most shocking examples of Black Don't Crack, he looks exactly like he did when he was a fucking teenager. And on top of that, his acting has significantly improved since 1993. So Zach completely astounded me in this movie. Ironically, though, that puts him directly at odds with Billy, though, who he shares almost all his scenes with. And while Billy didn't age terribly like a lot of the other cameo Rangers, it's crazy and uncanny that Billy's acting has not improved a single bit since 1993. He delivers all his lines with a completely bored, flat quality exactly like he did in the 1990s. But now it stands out horribly because Zach's acting has improved and Zach is able to deliver his lines in a completely believable and real way, showing that he's massively improved as an actor. But then he's bouncing off Billy and Billy hasn't, and it throws off the entire tone of the piece. If you really pay attention to it, Billy is pretty much doing the same acting as the 1990s Power Rangers show, and it's bad. And Zach is doing modern day good acting, and it's weird that they're doing scenes off each other because it's clashing. I think Billy directed this special and he threw in a bunch of weird moments that really show his ego being kind of out of control. There's this one really weird scene where the new Yellow Ranger rescues this random gay couple being attacked by putties in the woods. Now look, I didn't hate the scene, it's just kind of half-baked. The scene is transparently trying to say the Power Rangers stand with the LGBT community, and that's great, but more literally, the scene could also be interpreted as saying that gay people are under attack right now, and you should probably help them, but unfortunately the scene itself is very cringy and inorganic. It just comes out of nowhere, and it leaves me with so many strange questions about Who are these random two elderly gay men? Why were they alone in the woods? What were they doing out there? And most importantly, who the hell were they? Because it kind of feels like they're supposed to be a cameo because they kind of wink at the camera, but I don't know who the hell they are. I don't recognize them. Anyway, that's just the icing of the cake of like the weird and strange choices in this film. The movie has actually some major real problems. Like the first and most egregious one is that after original Yellow Ranger is killed by Robot Rita, there's a 1 year later time skip, and this time skip doesn't do shit for the story. In fact, it makes the story worse. It seems like they just threw it in there to skip over the greater semantics and fallout of the Yellow Ranger being dead and to not discuss her death, but since they skipped to a year later, that also means that Robot Rita ran on a rampage for like seemingly a year with no one checking her. Robot Rita is also explained to be an Alpha 5 that was possessed by Rita's vengeful ghost. They don't really get into this too much and they just kill her at the end, so I guess Alpha 5 died. But anyway, no one cares because they already made a new Alpha with the same voice, and I guess fundamentally this makes Alpha just a piece of furniture. By the way, speaking of Alpha in this movie, his costume looks so cheap in this movie. Like, the one in the 2017 movie was like an ugly alien thing, but in this one, it looks like a fucking Halloween costume. And what's really, really egregious, I can see the fucking actor's chin poking out of Alpha's neck. I've never seen that before. Maybe that was just like not noticeable in the original show. Maybe it's like an HD camera thing. But that's just a problem that exists in this movie, and it really like takes me out of it. Lastly, the biggest problem in this movie is they did the Megazord as a horrible, cheap fucking CGI thing, and that really bothered me. Like, I get that they're too cheap to make a robot costume like it's the 1990s, and I guess they probably didn't keep the old one, but for God's sakes, they could have just used stock footage from the old show and it will look better than this. Like, it wouldn't have been that horrible, but the Megazord CGI model has completely fucking wrong proportions. It has giant-ass legs, it has tiny-ass arms, it looks completely out of shape, and it looks jank as fuck. I can't believe no one checked them on it, or that they didn't base the 3D model on the toys, because I had a toy in the fucking 90s that looked better than this thing. Anyway, those are all the worst things about this special. Otherwise, if you're just looking for a Power Rangers reunion special, the special is good enough and it's very in line with the tone of the original Power Rangers special. I'm gonna say the Power Rangers reunion special gets like a frosty 6 out of 10. Because prose, it captures the tone of the original, and it tries to be a funeral for Toy Trang, and I gotta say, Zach astounded me. I can't believe Zach hasn't aged in 30 years. Cons though, there's so many awkward mistakes in this movie, and a lot of the cameo Rangers are just really, really old and like not impressive. And the ugly Megazord CGI is probably the biggest sin of this movie. Anyway, I'm not sure what to make of this special. There's also this like side plot where like all the Rangers who didn't agree to be in the special get turned into action figures. That's kind of funny and it's classically in line with the show. And there's also this scene at the end where all the old cameo Rangers show up, and it's really awkward looking because they're all super fat and out of shape, and like it's kind of like, I don't know, seeing all these old people show up as like fat old Power Rangers like really took me out of it. Look, I know tokusatsu reunion shows are pretty standard in Japan, and a lot of them always do really good in the ratings department, but Super Sentai reunion shows are different because the actors, for the most part, try the best that they can to keep themselves in good shape. I mean, hell, like the original Kamen Rider Takeshi Hongo is like pushing 90 and he can still kick some ass even though he's like really bulky at his age. But here it's just awkward and kind of sad seeing the American equivalent where just a lot of these actors have not kept themselves in good shape, and probably most of them were a little bit too old to come back again. Then again, if this was not really a reunion special and a pilot for some strange new full geriatric Power Rangers revival season, would I want more of it? Would I watch more of it? I'm honestly not sure, but hey, maybe it would have worked as a passing the baton kind of thing if they just introduced another new set of new Rangers. Anyway, that's all I have to say, you guys. Did you check this special out? Did you like it? Did you prefer the old Power Rangers? I also just found out the same night I watched this that they made like a bad remix of Power Rangers with like bad reality TV show overlays, and that also weirded me out. I don't really want to contemplate that right now. Anyway, I'm gonna go, but hope you guys enjoyed the special. Later.